Hi friends, welcome back to our little cottage here on the river in the far north of Idaho. So if you've been following along, then you know that for the past couple weeks I have been sick, and so that is why there was not a video posted this past Wednesday, and it ended up being pretty gnarly. It started out just as like a regular viral illness and then ended up turning into a secondary bacterial infection, which was, not fun at all. So after about 10 days of being sick and only getting worse, I finally realized that this was a little bit more than just a regular cold, especially because of the other symptoms I was having. So I finally went into the doctor, and they, of course, pretty much figured out right away what was going on, and so got me on a treatment plan. And thankfully now I am definitely starting to feel better. Not 100%, but definitely going in the right direction now. And so just really thankful to finally be feeling better. But our weather here in North Idaho has been absolutely amazing, and it finally feels like spring is here to stay. And we actually have a day coming up in the next couple of days that's supposed to hit almost 80 degrees. So very exciting, and just so wonderful to be enjoying the sunshine and starting to do all of the springtime cleanup tasks. I guess you could say spring cleaning in terms of outside. So here I am doing the first initial cleanup of the deck and getting the umbrella put up on our picnic table. There's still a little bit more I need to do out there. I do want to get the hose out and give the deck a good scrub, just because there's like a buildup of like dust and dirt on the actual deck. So I just want to get the hose out there and scrub it down. But anyway, this was just that first initial cleaning things up. There were still some pots, like my chrysanthemums from last fall were of course very dead, and those pots were still out on the deck. And I had planted some hyacinth bulbs in some pots hoping that they would bloom, and they didn't. So it was a little bit of an experiment, but and it didn't quite work out. So not sure why. I might do a little research and see what I did wrong, or if just hyacinths do not like being planted in pots. So anyway, but while I was out there, I decided to clean up my kitchen window. It was very dusty, and get that washed and cleaned up, which then of course led me to cleaning the inside of the kitchen window and taking everything off of the windowsill, taking the curtains down, and doing a really nice deep clean of the kitchen window, and just to get it really nice and fresh for spring. Now it is nice and clear, and you can easily see down to the river. So it was one of those things where I wasn't originally planning on cleaning the inside of the kitchen window, but just how my brain works, just cleaning the outside, I decided I needed to clean the inside. So that's what I did. here my husband is starting the work of framing in the old garage door, and this will also be the new entry into the house. And I've mentioned this a few times in past videos, but there you can see the storage area. There is a hot mess, and I've done my best to try and keep it somewhat organized. And it's just one of those spots where the stuff just doesn't have a permanent home yet, and things just tend to land there while we're working on making a permanent home for them. So eventually I will have a nice big pantry in this space, which will really help. We're going back and forth as to whether or not we want to put in a half bath in this space as well. That was the original plan, but then we're kind of thinking, well, maybe it might be better just to have a much larger pantry area. So we're still juggling it. We're still deciding. We'll see what we end up, what the final decision ends up being. But anyway, so he's also building me a custom front door. So we're not purchasing a front door. He's actually making it for me. So I'm very excited about that. He showed me a bunch of different doors online, just different styles that I really like, especially, of course, English country cottage style or like Tudor style. So that's kind of the vibe that the front door will give. It'll have a cottagey Tudor type feel to it when it's all said and done. So I'm very excited about that. We're still he can put the door up now. It's not finished, but he can put it up now. But we're waiting on these special hinges that he ordered that have a really cool look to them. So we just have to wait for those hinges to arrive. But yeah, so, and then my son also came out and helped him frame up the wall a little bit. And then, of course, the other big project we are working on is my garden, and it is coming along. So the next thing that we needed to do was measure for the fencing, and so we got it measured, figured out how many new fence posts we're going to need, plus the fencing wire, and so we'll be able to purchase those very soon and get the fence up. And then the next thing after that will be to move the chicken coop to the far end of the garden area and make a new little chicken run for them. And then we will till up the garden, and yeah, that'll be when I really get to get my hands in there and make the garden exactly the way I want it. And I will definitely be planting some things very soon in the already established part of the garden. So the original little garden that I had, some of the seedlings need to be put in the ground very soon, and they'll probably need to be put in the ground before the other, the whole entire big garden area is ready. So I'll get some of those things planted in there just so they're, they're well established and they're not suffering still being in their little tiny pots waiting to go into the ground. But we have a couple of plum trees here on the property, and we also have, we have 3 plum trees, and then we also have a crabapple tree. And the plum trees and the crabapple tree are starting to bloom, and the plum trees have beautiful white blossoms, and the crabapples are a beautiful pink blossom. And so now is the season when I get to start going outside and finding whatever is growing here on the property, whether it be tree blossoms or wildflowers, and make these wonderful bouquets that I get to put on my windowsill. So I'm very excited that we are finally back to things growing and blooming, and I get to make all sorts of fun bouquets to bring inside. And even though we've been having absolutely beautiful spring weather, we did wake up one morning to a delightfully cozy spring rain, and I absolutely loved it. I love the rain, and so I decided it was the perfect morning to bake some cookies. And so here I am making some homemade vanilla wafer cookies, and these cookies feel very nostalgic to me. These were cookies that we, of course, growing up bought store-bought, and a lot of times we would have them when we were on vacation. So like when we would take road trips down to Southern California for the summer, or go on a picnic or go camping, we would usually have a box of these vanilla wafers. And so I have loved figuring out how to make them from scratch at home. And of course, I will have the full recipe for you over on my blog, homespunannie.com, and I will also have it linked in the description box below. But you're going to want to start with half a cup or 1 stick of unsalted butter that has been softened to room temperature, and you're going to add to that half a cup of granulated sugar, and you're going to let those cream together. And then I like to use a vanilla bean pod, but this is completely optional. You do not have to have a vanilla bean pod in order to make this recipe, but I had one. I've had a tube of vanilla beans for a little while, and so whenever I have the opportunity to use one, I've just been grabbing one out of the cupboard and using it. So I thought it would go really well in this recipe, and they absolutely do. So if you have a vanilla bean pod, highly recommend using it. So you'll want to cut it in half and scrape out the vanilla caviar, as it's called, which they're really just the little vanilla seeds. And you'll add that to the mixture, and then you're also going to add in 1 whole egg and a couple teaspoons of vanilla. So since of course you're using the vanilla extract, you don't have to use the vanilla bean pod, but like I said, I recommend it. I love it. I love how it gives it that little speckled look to the cookies. But as I said, totally optional. So here I am getting the dough into a little pastry bag. You of course can use a Ziploc bag if you need to, but I found it's just easier to pipe them onto the baking sheet. And this baking sheet is lined with a silicone mat, but you could also use parchment paper. And this little silicone mat I'm using actually has the circles on it for making macarons. So that actually made it really handy for shaping these little cookies. But of course, that's not a requirement. I just happened to have that. So here I'm putting, I would say it's about a tablespoon amount of dough onto the cookie sheet. So you want to do about a tablespoon, and of course you want them to, be roughly all the same size. They don't have to be perfect, but you do definitely want them to be close to the same size so that way they bake evenly. And then once I was done piping them, I put a little bit of water on my finger and gently pressed down the little tips that were on the dough, because you want these to have a nice flat top. So you'll just gently press them out a little bit, so that they don't have that little peak in them. And then they're going to go in the preheated 350-degree oven for about 12 to 15 minutes. You'll want to keep an eye on them, make sure they don't burn, but they will start to brown slightly. But it's one of those things where you have to keep an eye on them. And these are cookies that you definitely want them to be crisp, because that is just the nature of a vanilla wafer. And so you'll let them cool on a wire rack and then enjoy. And then of course you'll just store them in an airtight container. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, share with someone else you think would enjoy it, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.